Hey everybody, this is Chaz from Raisley. We'll go ahead and get started. I think about 1 to 2 more minutes, just allow for folks to arrive. Thanks so much for being here. Hey everybody, as we get started, I think it's just about 3 minutes past the hour. If you can go ahead and just make sure we're all good to go, just say a quick hello in chat. We'd love to see who's here. All right. Tess, great. Thanks for being here. Joe, Haley, fantastic. Nick. A few other folks from DC. I love it. Seaboard is represented very well. Fantastic. Thank you, everybody. I think just with that, let's say about 4 minutes past, why don't we just go ahead and dive in? I think Emily and Francois and I are very excited to have you here today and really want to do our best to keep it within 45 minutes and not go over that time. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Plenty of chat questions to be asked and to be answered, and we look forward to sharing hopefully some tips with you all today. So first slide, and kind of going into quick questions. If you have a question in a general Q&A, we ask that you put all your questions in the question box. Anything that's technical, Georgie and Natalia from the Raisley team will help address anything through the chat box. And then slides, as you may ask and may wonder, will I get these slides? Absolutely. We are not going to hold them back. We will send them to you after the webinar, if not later today, tomorrow for sure. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and kind of share some today's plans. You know, what we have today is really intro, check. We did that, some general housekeeping. Want to talk a little bit about Raisley and promise to keep it relatively short. Just a little overview for those that may be new to Raisley. But we really want to dig into the overall tips and tools. And these are the recurring giving goods and overall tools, kind of the equipment check and kind of how or what you need to really succeed in the recurring giving year ahead. As far as about Raisely and thinking about Raisely, where we are and who we are, Raisely, if you're not familiar, is an online fundraising platform, for ambitious charities across the world to take control of the revenue to improve the well-being of planet and people. And what's unique about Raisely, what I've learned, is certainly being a mission-driven remote company with employees, about 35, 40 employees across 20 cities, 8 countries. We're also a proud B Corp, and a 2020, we became carbon neutral. Raisely is also proud to have powered $200 million in charitable contributions since we were formed about 2016. That's from about 1,000 large NGOs to small grassroots organizations who've used Raisely to build up their fundraising presence, digital fundraising presence through a wide spectrum of peer-to-peer, DIY fundraising, and timely fundraising appeals. Some of our clients, customers we worked with, many of you may be familiar with, the World Wildlife Fund, certainly in New Zealand. We have Oxfam in the US. One Tree Planted has been a great partner since for last several years with Raisely. Small Things, Concern Worldwide, etc. So we have a breadth and experience in working in a variety of different organizations, international and local. And now I want to turn it over, kind of the main show here, to Emily and Francois, who are going to walk through some better practices and when it comes to monthly recurring.
Thanks, Chaz. Can everyone hear me okay? I am thrilled to be here. Thanks to Raisely and Chaz for inviting us. And I'm so honored to be joined by my colleague, Francois Stovall. Thanks for being here, Francois.
Happy to be here. Hi, everyone.
We are, we're with Greater Good Strategy. We both happen to be based in Washington, D.C., but our agency works in countries across the world. And we are here to tell you about our favorite strategies when it comes to recurring giving. Here is probably the most exciting slide because you can see my pre-pandemic headshot and my old glasses. And also, this is the best way to reach us. So if you have questions or follow-ups or want to tell us that you like the background of our Zoom presentation, you can send us a quick email. Francois, do you want to just quickly introduce yourself?
My name is Francoise. I use she and her pronouns. I have been working in and for nonprofits for about 13 years and working on their digital programs, cultivating donors and sustaining donor programs.
Thank you. We're thrilled that you're here and that you lend your expertise to Greater Good clients and to this Raisely webinar. Super quickly about Greater Good, we work with nonprofit organizations. We help organizations raise money online and market themselves online. And we love recurring giving. In fact, it's my favorite topic to talk about. And whenever a client brings it up or there's an opportunity to bring it up, I always get extra excited. So Francoise and I pulled together our top 6 best practices, and then Chaz is going to finish things off with his additional best practices for around 10. So you will walk away from this webinar with our 10 favorite recurring giving best practices. Francoise, take it away.
Sure. So you are probably already, you probably already have a donate button in the footer of your emails. If you don't, definitely add one. It's always nice to have a passive ask, no matter what the email is. There's always that donate button at the bottom that people can click. And this is an easy addition, which is add a second button that asks people to become a monthly donor. So it would say donate or donate monthly, 2 buttons. And this way you're always, first, it serves a few purposes. One is you're always asking. It means you're always asking people for a monthly gift, no matter what you're emailing them about. And it gets it in people's minds also that, monthly is an option, is a possibility. So when they're moved to give at the bottom of that email, then they might think, you know what, actually monthly is a great idea. And then we'll talk about this later with Chaz, but then just make sure that that monthly button goes to a page that is set up to default to monthly, so that you're capturing that interest as it's occurring, and you're getting folks who are excited to give monthly, and that you're making that possible for them.
Perfect. So this is a shameless promotion about our new Greater Good Strategy branded tote bags, but it's also one of our favorite sustaining giving or monthly donor strategies, which is to run a swag campaign just for your monthly donors. So folks have probably seen this many times where an organization might promote the possibility of becoming a regular donor, a sustaining donor, monthly donor. And with that, you get a specific limited edition swag or branded item that's just for people who give regularly. We like this because it's kind of the bandwagon approach. It feels a little exclusive. And you know, when you see someone walking around town with that very specific tote bag or lapel pin or coffee mug, that they have really lent a good portion of their philanthropic giving to that particular organization. Sometimes people might become a monthly donor just to get the swag item. And sometimes they might become a monthly donor and the swag item is not the headline, but either way, it's kind of a nice excuse or a nice hook. I also like it because it provides a good visual when you're posting on social about this opportunity and you're maybe following it up with a pop-up on your website and some email content as well. To have some nice photos of the swag item, I think also often attracts additional visual attention.
Oh, Emily, can you go back for a sec?
Of course.
Just a couple of add-ons to this. One is that you can think expansively about swag. So swag can also mean access. So it can mean a quarterly webinar or a quarterly call with your CEO, or if you don't have a fulfillment company, sometimes the swag campaign can be a big thing to take on. And so thinking about what is easy, or like what can you offer access or in an insider look or something like that is an option. And then if there's any, like if your swag is like really fancy and you're a little bit worried that someone might sign up, do one $5 donation, get the fancy thing and then bounce. We have done with clients to just put in the fine print, like we'll send it to you on your third donation, just to like really make sure that they actually become monthly donors. And so that's also an option if you're at all concerned about folks sort of, signing up to get the tote bag and then exiting the program.
Francoise, one other point you reminded me of about access that I love is often we talk to clients who say, we don't have a fulfillment house, et cetera, just as you mentioned. And there are things actually for those of us that work at the organization or with the organization that don't feel that exciting. Maybe perhaps in non-pandemic times, a tour of the office or a lunch opportunity with leadership or program leadership. Those are really small, often low-cost things that are actually a huge draw for someone who's making a financial commitment on a very regular basis to your organization. And I think also pays itself forward. The dividends are great. If somebody's going to come to a tour of the office, they might post some images on social media and talk about their kind of behind the scenes access because they are kind of in with the recurring giving in crowd. Francoise, I'm going to move to the next slide. You good?
That's great. So the third tip is to think about who is most likely to become a monthly donor and target them with specific messages. So this is basically segmenting. We'll talk a little bit about segmenting also later on, but you want to think about who your most likely monthly donors are. And we recommend starting with the most likely folks are people who have given more than once in the past year. Those people are ready, they're primed, they're almost monthly donors. Sometimes already they're giving 5, 6, 7, 10 times a year. And so it's not that big of an ask to convert that to a regular monthly gift. And so once you are looking at the data and you decide who the folks are that are those most likely to convert, then you want to think about what messaging is going to move them. What's the message that is going to get them to give that monthly gift? That might be that insider access, or it might be a commitment to the organization. It might be, we're playing around right now with messaging of like, have an inside look in how we do our budgeting and how we count on our monthly donors. You're that monthly donor, you make it possible. So thinking about what messaging might move them. And then thinking about what medium they want to get that on. So it's probably going to be email, but there might be some times where you want to, pull a call list for your executive director to make some calls, or you might want to think about boosting that with a mail ask or a text ask, right? And so thinking about where these folks are and what message will move them and how they want to receive that message will help you to convert them.
Francoise, I love that. I love so much about what you just said, but especially that idea of those people have in many ways like already opted in. So why not just start with them, right? We're going to talk later in the presentation about a little kind of informal case study. And the way that that particular organization started was first by segmenting their list of people that had in many ways already opted in and maybe didn't even know the organization had a sustaining giving program. Okay, so this probably is one of my easiest and most commonly given pieces of advice, which actually applies for any kind of donor experience, which is saying thank you in special ways. There's a lot of ways to say thank you. One of the things that we often recommend is a handwritten thank you note, and to operationalize that, there's a million ways to do it, but one of the ways that we find is a little bit less taxing for nonprofit organizations is to set aside maybe 10 minutes at the end of a board meeting and ask the folks on the board to actually write the thank you notes to the people that are maybe new sustaining donors or on their anniversary of becoming a sustaining donor. There's a lot of really great opportunities to leverage an actual thank you note. And if you don't want to mess with postal mail, you can even send a one-off email. It doesn't have to be a huge formatted email. It can actually just be a personal note that says, hey, I'm on the board of this organization and I learned that you recently became a sustaining donor. We're so happy to have you. Thank you. One message I often like to include in the thank you note is that becoming a sustaining donor helps the organization do more effective budget forecasting. Francoise mentioned this a little bit earlier, but having that consistent stream of dependable income allows organizations to scale, to do a good job planning, to be financially responsible. Often it depending on how large the program is, impacts hiring decisions and the launch of new programs and resources, which is, I think, a really important selling point when talking about expanding a sustaining giving program.
The fifth tip is to solicit feedback and opinions from your sustaining donors. So people want to feel like they're a part of something big, and they want to they want their voice to be heard. They're in this case, if they're a monthly donor, they're investing in an organization, and they want to be a part of that organization on a really fundamental level. So we recommend doing, even twice a year, quarterly surveys, asking them for their opinion on, either the issue, the organization, how it's going. This is actually a great place to say, like, what swag would you like? Do you like this sticker or that sticker, that kind of thing. And there are a couple, sort of approaches to take with this. One is you can do it just to do it because you want people to feel like their voice is being heard and that their input is being taken and that you want them to feel special. And then you can also do it to really actually think about what feedback you do want from them that you will incorporate into your program and set it up in that way. So each one is valid, honestly. Like if you're doing it just to do it, I think people still love to fill out that survey. They still love to feel like you're listening to them and their opinion. But then taking that next step to think about what information really will make your program stronger, and then making sure that you can incorporate that can also help.
I saw some research. This is not super current research. It's probably from 2 or 3 years ago, but I think that the sentiment still holds that folks who fill out a survey are then more likely to get involved in other ways within the organization, which is often, it could even be a precursor to the sustaining gift ask, right? So here we're talking about incorporating this, especially for your sustaining donor audience. But I also like the idea of kind of warming up the audience with a survey first, and then putting the ask in after someone completes the survey.
When I'm designing welcome series, that's almost always the first or second email in the welcome series is an issue survey, or how do you want to get involved survey, or some kind of thing that solicits feedback for that reason.
I love that. I also like the use of the verb designing a welcome series. I'm going to start using that. It makes it sound so much more fun. Okay, so our sixth best practice is to focus on segmentation. You got a little foreshadowing from Francoise about this. But when launching a recurring giving program or trying to grow a recurring giving program, the segmentation is important on a few levels. On this particular slide, we're talking about a customized ask string or the specific dollar amount that might go in some of the communication. And if someone's giving history shows that the last gift they made was, a 3-figure gift at $250, we don't want to ask them for a $5 one-time donation. There's a whole world of best practices. There's probably a webinar series we could give about the formulas to use to specifically fill in what those numbers would be. But I think the most important point I want to make is paying attention to the history, and then just having a nod to that in whatever you're incorporating in a ask string. And in general, I think segmentation, especially both when you're starting a program, so thinking about people who have given in a recurring capacity, but also the types of messaging you're sending out. So if someone is a $5 monthly donor, but has been a recurring donor for the last 10 years, that's actually a very significant long-term commitment that they have to your organization, even though the monthly gift is quite low. Francoise, do you have other thoughts on this slide, or should we go to the case study?
Let's go to the case study.
Okay, great. All right, so this is a very text-heavy slide. I'm just going to own that I violated probably every best practice when putting this one together, but you will have a chance to look at it in more detail when Chaz shares the deck later today or tomorrow. I did want to just showcase the Safaria. Safaria is a Greater Good Strategy client. They've been with us actually longer than our agency has formally existed. And we worked with them specifically to start their sustaining giving program. So they had kind of a default program, which looked like literally a button on their donate form, but no real strategy behind it. They weren't really pushing the opportunity to give on a regular basis to their donor base. And we did several things to help them kind of put this together, but I think the important pieces here are that we did some very specific marketing about the impact of sustaining donors. It doesn't sound that hard. It actually isn't that complicated, but the organization in the past hadn't put a specific story together about what becoming a sustaining donor would do to the organization's mission and their reach and the way that they served their constituents. So you can see we put a screenshot of one of the sustaining donor emails in the lower right-hand corner. The other thing we did was brand their sustaining donor program. So we called it the Safaria Sustainers. And we did a lot of sort of plays on you are sustaining us as an organization, and it's people like you that allow us to grow and acquire new techs, et cetera. But we used that brand Safaria Sustainer quite specifically so that folks would sort of see it as a special program. They were having access to something special. And they also, we mentioned this idea earlier, but they partnered with a publisher and they actually did a book giveaway of some of the text that they feature on their website in hardcover form. So for everyone who became a sustainer during a certain period of time, they received a book mailed to them, which this particular website is a digital library. So the concept of receiving a hardcover book was very much in line with their mission. Francoise, anything I'm missing here? Do you want to talk about anything else related to Safaria?
Just now that it is such a healthy program, they have more than 1,300 monthly donors. And so now we're starting to layer in messaging to other folks about like, don't you want to be a part of this thing? So I had mentioned before, like people always want to feel like they're a part of something big. And so now we're starting to use that number of like, can we, do you want to join the 1,300 people? Can we get to 1,500? If we can get to 1,500, that will let us budget for X. Can we get to 1,600? So making people feel like, this isn't just like an empty branded thing that no one is a part of, but that like really joining this club of sustainers is, the cool thing to do, right? You want to make them feel like they're really buying into something that is exciting and that has a big group behind it. And so that's sort of the next phase of this campaign, I think, is expanding that by making people feel more, like they want to be in this cool program.
So two other quick things, and then I think we can turn it over to Chaz. The first one is we also authored an email to the Safaria list from an existing sustainer at one point. And we just really told that person's story, obviously with their permission, about why they were so committed to the mission of the organization. And then we, of course, repackaged that content in other ways on other channels. But I think that message of somebody beyond the organization saying, here's why I've committed to be a recurring donor to this organization, and here's my personal story, I think sometimes just mixes it up a little bit so that we're not always hearing from the same organizational messengers. And then the other thing, and this was sort of a hack that we created, the organization launched a branded swag store at I think it was around end of year giving a few years ago. And rather than shipping off a specific swag item to everyone who became a sustainer, we provided a discount code, or like basically a gift certificate code to everyone who became a sustainer. So it kind of made it so that the logistics of actually getting the branded item were a little bit easier on the organization, and also helped to give a little bit more airtime and build buzz around the swag store. So something else to think about, whether it's a discount code or a full coupon code. If you do have a swag store, you're launching one, that's a nice way to sort of meld the two programs. So this is just a quick thank you, but it's actually a fake out because I'm going to turn it over to Chad, and we'll have time for Q&A at the end of the presentations.
I love the tote bag. That really speaks to my public media background. So thank you, Emily and Francois. I really, we appreciate it. The one thing that came to mind, I love the saying, and Emily, you may remember this from days ago, gratitude with an attitude. And it's always been one of those things that stuck with me. And I think that's really, really kind of came forward with your presentation. So thank you so much for sharing that. It's really about the donor. So I wanted to transition and talk a little bit about sort of, well, you've seen my profile pic. Again, that's actually courtesy of the headshot of Emily from days agone, I will say. But right now, where I am, well, we're beyond sort of virtual school. In the last year, I spent the last year as a chief snack getter. I was the virtual learning enforcement officer, but that really entailed a good bit of, being with family and kids and small kids for those who may have children at home. And so that gave me a lot of opportunity to look at what was in the field, what was emerging, and where Raisley kind of came into the forefront was thinking through kind of what an opportunity would be in the country. So Raisley, being a very much a company that was formed in Australia, but global presence, we look at the next slide, Emily, if you don't mind. We're looking at the overall importance of Raisley and sort of position and what we're doing today, building upon what we know from Australia and from clients across the world. And the first question I think is, did you know? 20% of US population, these are Gen Xers, and I'm probably sharing a little too much, but I am actually fitting within that crowd. Nearly half of us are enrolled in a monthly giving program. We're, the Gen Xers, are also largely the first generation to grow up with personal computers. I still remember my electric typewriter that had a little screen to type out for my 10th grade paper. Though that does not make me tech savvy, it definitely has positioned me to grow up and really become a little bit more familiar with the world. So we look at Gen X, and sort of the opportunity for recurring donors and for sort of the digital native population moving forward. Wanted to share a little bit about sort of the Australian impact and why, as an American, and some of you on the phone may also resonate with you. Well, first and foremost, that there is high adoption across Australia, mobile adoption, I should say, cash payments and digital wallets. And for a lot of companies that are actually investing in Australia as a testing ground, because of just that, they have a high adoption of digital payments. And as a result, I think lots of Raisley is focused on that mobile responsiveness. And many of the clients and customers that we work with today have actually seen that play out within their giving trends. In fact, 60%, more than 60% of gifts that are processed via Raisely are actually done so from a mobile device. You know, that's roughly 2 times more than US population. Those US donors who are giving via mobile are roughly 25–30%. So that's a pretty significant uplift from a mobile and importance of where mobile needs to be within any strategy to really target those gestures, those millennials, and even the boomers, the largest gift population. So if we look at some of the tips and kind of really digging into a little bit more around the technical piece of it, building out sort of, I think, the strategy and overall messaging and an organizational development, I think Emily and Francois really dug into so beautifully. We're looking at actually the functionality and looking at your own tools and thinking about what you can do to really highlight or elevate the ask. And the first one here is a default ask to monthly gift. If you're asking for gift giving and that is a priority for you at your organization, lead with that. Lead with the monthly gifts. Lead with a monthly gift. About 8 years ago, we actually looked at gift type parity, in which you monthly gift at one time be on the same level. And they were not actually, and that was profound at the time, but that was less of the recognition of monthly and more of just generally accepting where your audience is today and where they want to give. Speak to them for what they know and what they want in the campaigns that you have. The next thing is customizing the ask string. Again, this is really the opportunity to tailor the dollar amounts, the text, and images to each giving interval to really personalize that experience. It can be based on impact, it can be based on culture, and even data driven. So impact being, you know, for example, $17 will provide water for a child for 1 week. Cultural historic could be $29, representing 29 million people suffering from diabetes. But the important part here is really putting some substance to the impact and overall visual cues to really drive that gift and make it real for the donor. Next one. The next, and building on sort of the mobile first or digital first culture, I think that's really born from the technology, is thinking through how we optimize the screen experience. All platforms, all solutions, all of what we do today includes mobile. So how are your donors, how are your members, how are your supporters actually accessing or viewing your campaigns? And so within Raisely and within many different tools, you can actually screen, you can look at the screen experience. So optimizing that screen appearance being key here. You know, how are your donors seeing it through their desktop, their tablets, through their mobile? You know, maybe you want that ask or that gift string or that donate button to be higher up on the mobile because of various images or text is pushing everything down on the smaller screen. Well, you can adjust that. And that's really, again, optimizing to what your where your donors are and what they want, meeting them where they are most importantly. Also, for many of you who have explored and thinking through, and real back there real quick, Emily, if you don't mind, Apple Pay, Google Pay, it's the only way I think I pay these days with my watch. But as many of us and payments are made, increase that mobile conversion rate by up to 60% with Apple Pay, with Google Pay, depending on the browser, of course. And so thinking about that immediacy of the gift at its core. All right. Yep, embed forms. So embedding forms. This is certainly not new. And I think from the tactic and kind of tactical standpoint here, the idea is, again, being where your donors are, meeting them at their level or at their interests. And that's being present on various pages across your website. So embed that form on the side of your website, the sidebar. Put it up in the hero image if you so can. You know, the idea here is certainly be able to sort of replicate it throughout your sites to reinforce that giving opportunity. Certainly default again to monthly, being that sort of if your organization, if your campaign is targeting recurring giving, you know, lead with that. Lead with a giving of monthly. That can be a one-time. That can be a monthly giving ask that can be embedded across your website to really enforce the importance of that from an organizational standpoint. A couple quick examples here, and this is Surfaid in Australia. But what I love about this is an entire website and kind of built out with the templates of Raisley. And what I like about it is the fact that within the experience and within the overall presence of the organization online, that they're actually putting the donate box up on the front page, on the homepage. I believe this is a static ask, meaning this is more or less any time of year you go to their homepage. But it's a first thing to really reinforce the giving and the importance of you as a donor to support the organization. Likewise, if you are landing on about page, impact page, get involved page, that you may also see a embeddable box to really, again, piece together the cause with the action, and that's an act to give and support the cause you love. The next one, again, as an example here of UN Ocho. What I love about this is very much on the disaster relief side of the house. So thinking through that immediacy of gift being so key, utilizing an embeddable function or utilizing a donation form in which a donor does not have to leave the page to be to make that gift. So if I donate today, turn, simple overlay, lightbox, whatever you want to call it, is really reinforcing and meeting the donor where they are, which is the most important part. All right. That's a wrap. Top 10 recurring tips. And I am not going to read all these to you. Certainly, Emily and Francois have highlighted. Hopefully, we've built out. I like solid numbers. I like tens. So we have 10 tips here, but to make it a little bit more digestible and hopefully a little bit easier at this point in time to share with you a wrap, we have one more slide to kind of talk through top 3 takeaways. And so summation of what we talked about today. And Emily and Francois, please chime in if there's anything to elaborate here. But, you know, one thing and first thing, and really as you walk away and think about your own experience from the donor perspective, you know, how are you prioritizing those monthly giving campaigns? You know, are you including the recurring giving ask on all emails? Are you considering swag to incentivize giving? And are you embedding your ask everywhere? Are you meeting your donors where they are? Personalized experience, also very key. So making sure that the target that you're targeting donors past gifts. If that is the campaign objective, of course, being creative with your thank yous, that gratitude with an attitude being so key here, and customize the gift array to showcase the impact and really making it relevant to who they are and what they're interested as it relates to the campaign and overall objectives of the organization. Lastly here, and kind of take away, leverage your tools to increase the giving. All tools afford a great deal of flexibility, allowing where and how you can maximize what you do today from a strategic standpoint. Look at what you do, look at how you can do it, and put the best foot forward by defaulting to ask a monthly donor. Monthly donors are the bread and butter. We are in the age of a subscription economy, and your monthly donors are very much Gen Xers, want to support you on an ongoing basis for that recurring revenue and that realized financial stability. So with that, thank you, everybody. I think we have 5 more minutes that we're going to kind of open up to Q&A. If there's any questions or any additions.
It looks like there's a few questions. I'm going to just jump into the first one from Missy about moving someone from giving multiple times a year to giving monthly. And how do you convince someone that the general higher amount rather than dividing up what they're already giving into 12 months? So Missy, this is such a good question. The first thing I would start with, and I'm curious if Chaz and Francois have other thoughts here, but I would really start with thinking about impact, right? So this is an opportunity to say to someone, when we get this type of monthly donation from a donor, this is the amount of service we're able to provide, or this is the number of people we can meet, students we can engage, people we can meet with, or meals we can serve or something. So really making it actually making the impact directly tied to the dollar amount and making that as clear as possible. So someone doesn't just kind of default to like, oh, I'll just give one time. And then the other piece I would say is to really let someone know that it's that dependable revenue stream that allows organizations to plan for growth. And then the third thing is we know that the kind of set it and forget it, like Netflix just charges my credit card and I don't really think twice about it. That's actually like a time saver. It's easier for people. It's fewer transactions and fewer things to think about is what I mean by that. Francoise or Chaz, do you have other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say, Misty, also that there is still there is benefit in just setting that, like them, sorry, let me get my thoughts in order. That having that monthly donation add up to what they're giving through the year is still valuable, because it, like Emily said, if you set it and forget it, then you don't have to like remind them at the end of the year. They might forget, they might move on, they might, so like there is still even benefit, even if the revenue amount stays the same, in having it be a monthly gift. That way you can plan for it and they also don't forget to like do that once or twice or third time donation one-off. So before you upsell them or expect them to do a higher amount, I would think it's actually even fine. There's still benefit in them just converting to monthly gift at the same level.
That's great. I think guys answered it. I think I've got the next question. It seems like one-off seems a little odd way to say one-time gift. How did donors react to this? Cultural, that is a good question, and it's actually something that resonated with me. And there is sort of I think a cultural difference there. But I will say, and having gone back and forth with our wonderful support team, that this can be updated and this can reflect sort of the norms of the organization. And another good example of that is instead of recurring donation, sustainer. So all organizations, even different sectors, use different words, and it's important to reflect, what your donors know and what messaging resonates with them. So absolutely, it can be changed.
It looks like there's another question from Jamie about a very small giving program that currently has only 50 folks a month, which also, let's just say congratulations that you have 50 people at all. Thoughts on sending a mass email to all donors introducing the monthly donor program. So I think you have a handful of options here. The first thing you could do is just suppress the people that are already monthly donors and send something out sort of like relaunching or launching the program. But you also have an opportunity to maybe go to the people that are already monthly donors and see if there's a juicy story in there, and then showcase that story. Even if it's a small number of people, no one needs to know that you only have 50 folks there, and showcase the story. Maybe that's an opportunity to have one of those promotional emails come from one of your existing monthly donors. As Francoise was sort of saying, it's a little bit of like a bandwagon sort of approach, and showing that you're not going to be alone when you join this program. Another thing you can do is send a note out to the entire list that says, thank you to those of you who have already opted in to our Sustaining Giving program. You make so much possible. And if you're not part of it already, here's an opportunity to jump in. But I think you can get really creative with the approach here. Other thoughts on that?
That's a great point, Emily, that once you do have monthly donors, that you may want to think critically about not sending them a lot of donation appeals in between. I think it is appropriate. I think it is appropriate to send them some donation appeals. They still might make a one-time gift, or they might increase their monthly donation. But part of the beauty of being a monthly donor is you've kind of then opted out of like the donation request cycle.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, Francoise. So I think a lot of environmental organizations actually at paperless giving, thinking about sort of that, environmental sustainability and how do you position it. So absolutely, I think that's a really good point. There's a question here on how have you seen regular givers going on to leaving requests? And I would start off that question as like, absolutely. As we've just said, treat them as big time donors. They could even be major donors, but they are a special group of donors regardless. And they are most loyal and most supportive. And so how you nurture them, how you cultivate them, and how you upsell for the best possible sense to other aspects of the program is critically important, and they are primed for that. Emily and Francoise, anything to add with that?
Yeah, there will be a point at which they probably move into your major donor bucket. If they're giving, for example, $100 a month, that after a year, they might qualify to that major donor stewardship. And at that point, I would assume that, whatever sort of major donor stewarding that you're doing that introduces stuff like bequest, planned giving, gifts of stock, right? Like that sort of all of those things would kick in at a certain point. So yeah, don't pull those numbers, at least once a year and sort of see who gets bumped into that bucket for sure.
So if I may, we have, I think 2:45. And so if anybody needs to jump off, please freely jump off. We appreciate your time. We're going to stay on if it's okay with you, Emily and Francois, to answer a couple more questions. But if you need to go, thank you so much for being here. And we look for following up with you very soon. Let's see. I think there's a question from Chrissy that I can start off and reading. And I think there may be a few different responses here. In reference to your tip to try and encourage donors to be a part of something bigger and great, do you think it is worthwhile to talk openly about how many regular donors or givers your organization has? For example, having too many regular givers be a deterrent?
So this is a controversial approach, and I'm actually very curious to hear your thoughts, Francois and Chaz. I really like when organizations send out like a super personal, sort of unpolished, like, I'm the executive director, or I'm the director of development, and I'm here to tell you that our board has asked me, or this foundation has asked me, or a major donor has asked me, blah, 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 to double the number of sustaining donors that we have. Or I've set a personal goal for myself to go from 50 to 100 sustaining donors by the end of the year or something. And here's why, and then moving into the impact. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it actually, if you can give the context and humanize the employees of the organization that are doing the work to raise the money, that actually helps to also build relationships. And sometimes, online fundraising feels sometimes like a little bit not personalized, and this is a way to really make it feel less one-to-many and more person-to-person. So I don't actually think there's anything wrong with that. And in fact, I would encourage it. I think it could be tested. You may try like a small portion of the list and share that information and see how it performs before you kind of go big with that information. But you could always argue that sharing, we have a super successful program, people maybe wouldn't want to give because the program is so successful. Or if you share we have a super small program, people don't want to give because no one else is part of it. So you can sort of always argue the other side. And I just generally like to go with a very transparent, personal, direct kind of style of communication.
Yeah, I don't think that having too big a program is discouraging. I think people, again, like they want to feel like they're excited about, they're part of something. And I think a lot of that also just comes down to how you frame it. So most people who don't work in and around nonprofits don't know what a successful giving number is. They don't know your budget. They don't know, like, is 50 good or bad? They don't know. So also you can frame it, it's sort of up to you to say, like, we already have so many, we already have 50 monthly donors. That is so huge. Will you join this, group of folks that we're counting on to keep our organization thriving? So you can also sort of, you get to determine what is a large program or not. You get to tell people if your program is big.
I like that. I think being transparent is key, to Emily, to your point, and candid. That everybody's got to start somewhere, and starting with a monthly program. The branding it is I would offer, and please chime in, Emily and Francois, if you agree, disagree. That branding it and making it special to 2 people or 2,000 people is critical. And so how you welcome them, how you engage them, and how you make them feel unique, because they are unique. And so that is, forefront.
I mean, I also think that there's so many opportunities. You can get really creative with how you talk about it. And I wonder if there's actually any good stories in those 50 existing people, potentially, where you could say, this person is we are the only organization that this person has chosen to be a sustaining donor of, and be inspired by Rebecca's story and allow her, join Rebecca or something. You can really personalize it. Or you could even say, as a development director, all of our donors are important to me, but there's a special group of people that I really admire. And those are the people that have made a regular monthly commitment to support our organization. I think that it's more of an opportunity to me than it is a hindrance.
Yeah, donor scrolls could also play a part of this. Testimonials, kind of that software, you don't have to, if numbers aren't your thing, testimonials and really elevating sort of the experience over the quantity. So absolutely. Let's go, how about we go into another question here. And I think this is from Helga. Francoise, I don't know if you can read it or you can see it
Sure.
easily enough.
It's addressed to me, but I think Emily, you will certainly have some ideas about this as well. Besides the welcome series and the tips to invite them to share their thoughts, what else would you do to suggest that what else would you suggest to keep the regular donors engaged, especially those who've been part of the program for a while? So some of this is varying what you're asking them. So that is why we like things like surveys, petitions, testimonials, share a picture, share on social. So you don't want to just like only come to them with financial related requests, but thinking, and also like we love a newsletter, keeping people sort of excited about the latest headlines from the organization, the latest work, the latest milestone, the latest successes that you've achieved. So yeah, just I think, keep making sure that you're offering people a variety of ways to click, to get involved, to get excited, to stay informed is really key. And that you're not just only going to them quarterly and saying like, hey, as a sustaining donor, have you considered increasing your donation? That getting into a route like that can turn people off. But as long as you're keeping a really wide menu of options for them, I think they'll be excited.
I love that. The only thing I would add to it is you can always celebrate someone's sustaining donor like birthday or anniversary. So, it was 12 months ago that you first joined this special part of our community, and it's a great opportunity to do a phone call where you don't do an ask. Francoise mentioned like pulling a call sheet for an executive director or a board chair. It's a great opportunity if there's a handful of folks, just call through once a month and literally just thank them for their support and give a brief update about what's going on within the organization. And that's it. Sometimes leads to an unsolicited one-off gift as well, or a handwritten note. But I like the sort of celebration of the milestone, because the whole point is that we want them to just set it and have it actually not be an additional task on their to-do lists. So some people may actually forget, and it's a really nice opportunity to celebrate them and the impact that they've made.
That's also good social content, Emily. You can film your ED making those calls, and then you can use that to solicit future people saying like, hey, you can get a call. Look at how fun this is. And then, don't you want to call from our executive director? She'll call you when it's, when you become a sustainer or something like that.
I love that.
Great. I think I am seeing that looks like maybe all the questions we have, and we're just up to the hour here, so a little bit longer. And as you can see, I think or have heard, Emily, Francoise, and I think we could talk all day about sustainers recurring. It is truly sort of a passion of mine as well. And so thank you so much, Emily. Thank you so much, Francoise, for joining us and really sharing all the best practices that you've gained over the years of working so many diverse organizations to really grow their digital fundraising program and to really put themselves front and forward into how to make their donors and audience feel special and be special. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks for having us, Raisley. And thanks to everyone who joined. So good to see a good number of Greater Good clients in the audience as well. And Francoise, special thanks to you. I love webinaring with you.
Anytime, Emily.
Thanks again,
right.
Chad.
Have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.